In 1527, Panfilo Narvaez received a commission from the King of Spain to sail the coastline mapped by Pineda and search for other civilizations. Narvaez commanded 400 men, 82 horses, 4 ships, and a brigantine. He brought supplies to outfit a colony and intended to settle on the Rio de las Palmas as Pineda had suggested. With this company as second in command and treasurer was Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca. De Vaca would prove to be the most important contribution to the future of Texas. The expedition sailed from Spain to Cuba, where hurricanes destroyed 2 ships and killed 60 men and 20 horses. The remaining ships sailed west toward the Rio de las Palmas, but steady storm winds drove the ships north to the western coast of Florida. Narvaez went ashore to explore the area, and in a fateful decision, decided to send the ships on to the Rio de las Palmas, while he and his army followed along the coast. What Narvaez did not realize was that the Rio de las Palmas lay over 1,000 miles away. The problem was in the instruments used for navigation. Sailors depended on the compass to find direction, the hourglass to determine how long it took to sail from one point to another, and the astrolabe to find the position on the earth.
This is an astrolabe, a copy of one from the 1554 shipwreck collection of the Corpus Christi Museum of Science and History. The astrolabe was used to determine your location.
It's rather crude by our standards today. The way the astrolabe worked is that at 12 o'clock noon, you held it up and moved the arm, called the alidade, until the 2 holes would line up and the sun would shine through the 2 holes. You then would take that reading off the astrolabe, and using a mathematical formula, you would be able to determine your latitude, that is, the degrees north or south of the equator. That's why the maps of the day were fairly accurate in terms of latitude. However, an accurate reading for longitude, that is, the degrees east or west of the prime meridian, would have to wait several centuries until the invention and development of the chronometer, a very accurate timepiece. If you were attempting to take a reading on a cloudy day, the astrolabe was virtually useless. So if it happened to be a cloudy day, you'd have to wait until the following day, hope the skies had cleared and the sun was out. So you could conceivably go several days without knowing exactly where you were.
The ships of the Narvaez expedition sailed west in search of the Rio de las Palmas, but found nothing. After turning back and searching the coastline, the crew gave up and returned to Cuba. Narvaez and his soldiers on land were on their own. The natives of Florida had already experienced the harshness of the Spanish expedition with Ponce de Leon in 1513. On this new expedition, Narvaez did nothing to change their minds about the intentions of these intruders. The Spanish fought their way from village to village, expecting each time to find gold, but each time they found only thatched hut villages and angry natives. Finally, wounded and sick with fever, the men turned back to the coastline only to find no ships for escape. With the Gulf of Mexico before them and angry natives behind them, the surviving Spaniards hammered their armor and swords into saws and axes and built 5 rafts, while the Indian arrows picked away at them from the forest. When the rafts were finished, only 242 men were alive. The group pushed off into the Gulf on rafts resting only a handspan above the waterline. For 45 days, the rafts were tossed along the stormy Gulf. Horsehide water bags rotted, and the men began to die of thirst. The rafts became separated, caught in rough seas, and the current kept them from being able to land. Finally, on the raft of Cabeza de Vaca, 50 men, more dead than alive, were washed up on the shore of a barrier island off the coast of Texas. De Vaca named the island Malhado, meaning misfortune. Most historians agree the place was probably Galveston Island. The date was November 6, 1528. Narvaez was never seen again, probably drowned in the Gulf. Of the 5 rafts, only about 80 men washed ashore in Texas. Karankawa Indians found them and gave them food and shelter. but after the first winter, only 15 men were left alive. The survivors were separated up among the wandering bands of Indians and used as slaves. Cabeza de Vaca gathered roots of water plants for food and carried heavy loads on his back. He also worked as a shaman or medicine man and was ordered to heal the sick. Their method was to bless the sick, breathing upon them, as the natives did, then reciting prayers to God to save them. They made the sign of the cross. All those that they cared for told the others they were sound and in good health. For this, the Indians treated the Spanish kindly. After 6 years of slavery, de Vaca escaped the island and joined a band of natives on the mainland. There he worked as a doctor and was also allowed to be a tradesman between the tribes. He began to explore, always looking for a way to return home. At one gathering of the tribes, de Vaca was reunited with 3 other survivors, Durantes, Castillo, and a Moorish slave called Esteban. The men planned an escape during the tuna harvest while the natives were busy gathering the fruit of the cactus. They walked south, into the desert lands covered in mesquite and cactus, hoping to reach the Spanish settlements in Mexico. In South Texas, they encountered the Coahuiltecans and were welcomed as honored guests because their fame as healers had spread. De Vaca removed an arrow from a man's shoulder and sewed up the wound with deer sinew. The man lived, and the Spaniards became celebrities with the roaming Coahuiltecan tribes. Next, the 4 men traveled west, following the Rio Grande, and met the Humano tribe in far west Texas. This tribe lived in adobe houses. To the Spaniards, they seemed the most civilized of all groups they had met in Texas. The gentle natives told them of the great pueblos to the north, with many stories and many people. They also told the Spaniards of men who came from the south on strange animals and attacked their villages and took the men and boys away. De Vaca and the others knew these men must be Spanish slave hunters, and they turned south into Mexico to find them. After 8 years, de Vaca and the other men reached the Spanish settlements in Mexico. They told their incredible story of hardship and described the lands they had crossed and the natives they had met. Most of what we know about the Karankawa, the Coahuiltecan, and the Humano tribes comes from Cabeza de Vaca's account. But Viceroy Mendoza in Mexico City was not interested in the descriptions of the lands and the cultures of Texas. He had only one question: did the men find gold? No was the answer. No gold. But de Vaca did relate the stories of great cities to the north that the Humano told. To the natives, great cities meant the large adobe buildings and Pueblo culture. But of course, to the Spaniards, great cities could mean only one thing: golden empires. Cabeza de Vaca was the first man to travel across Texas and report on the land and the people he found there. He wrote a book about his travels, and his adventure led to later expeditions and settlement in Texas.